Alina stirred her coffee absent-mindedly, the silence of the house pressing down like a fog. The ticking clock in the hallway marked time she no longer felt. Mark had left early again. Another business trip. Another absence. She couldn't remember the last time he looked her in the eyes for longer than a few seconds. Everything had become transactional: meals, phone calls, touches. She told herself it was just a phase, that marriages went through these things. But it had been nearly a year since intimacy meant anything more than duty. She glanced at her reflection in the kitchen window, almost startled by how tired she looked. There was a time when she dressed up for Mark's return, made plans, tried to surprise him. Now she barely noticed when he left. She wasn't angry. That would require energy. Mostly she was numb. A knock at the door broke her thoughts. It was Liam, the neighbor's son. He looked surprised to see her, as if he didn't expect anyone to answer. He said his mom had ordered something and it might have been dropped here by mistake. She stepped aside and let him in without thinking. His presence reminded her of summers past, of barbecues and laughter when things were simpler. He used to be a lanky kid. Now he stood tall, confident, with a calmness in his voice that felt unfamiliar. While she searched near the entryway. He lingered near the counter, his gaze scanning the room. She asked about his studies, just to fill the air. He replied politely, then added that the house seemed too quiet. She smiled without meaning to. It usually is, she said. She didn't mean to say that out loud. He nodded slowly, not mocking her, just observing. There was a silence, not awkward, but heavy. He said almost casually, "I always thought you looked sad." She turned toward him, unsure how to respond. He added quickly, not in a bad way, "Just like something's missing." She laughed, a short, breathy sound, trying to dismiss the comment. But it hit her harder than she wanted to admit. No one had said that. Not even Mark. Maybe especially not Mark. She asked if he wanted tea. He said yes, then helped her pull down the mugs, as they waited for the kettle. She found herself asking him questions she wouldn't usually bother with. Why he chose psychology. If he liked being back home for the summer. If he missed college life. He answered icily, comfortably, but occasionally redirected the focus to her. He wasn't intrusive, but perceptive. She began to feel exposed in the strangest way, not because of what she said, but what he noticed without her saying it. When the tea was ready, he took his cup and walked to the window. "It's odd," he said, "how two houses can be so close but feel like different worlds." She stood beside him. He looked at her again, this time without filters. "I used to think you were perfect, like untouchable. But now," he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. She felt her chest tighten. She wasn't supposed to feel anything. This was Liam. She remembered babysitting him once when his mom had an emergency. But the boy in her memory didn't match the man standing before her now. Something had shifted. Or maybe it had been shifting for a long time and she just hadn't noticed. He looked at his phone, then back at her. "I should go. Thanks for the tea." As he reached the door, he paused. His hand on the handle, he turned to her, eyes steady. "I don't think he deserves you." Then he left, the door clicking shut softly behind him. Alina stood still, heart pounding in her ears. She didn't know what startled her more, the words, or how much she wanted to believe them. That night, Mark called briefly. She mentioned nothing about Liam. Instead, she asked about his hotel. He answered, distracted. As always, before hanging up, he said, "Love you," like it was an obligation. She whispered it back, her voice barely audible. Lying in bed. She stared at the ceiling, Liam's words repeating in her mind. She felt something dangerous stirring, not lust, not even longing, but the sudden awareness of how far she had drifted. From herself. Not because of Liam, but because someone finally noticed she was adrift. Asterisk, it wasn't the knock that changed her. It was the mirror he held up quietly, unflinchingly. And once she saw herself through his eyes, well, she couldn't unsee it. Asterisk Alina told herself it meant nothing. Just a moment, just words. But the way Liam had looked at her, no hesitation, no apology left a mark she couldn't scrub clean. She avoided. The porch the next morning kept the curtains closed, cleaned rooms that didn't need cleaning, anything to silence the echo of his voice in her head. But silence had a memory, and it played everything back with perfect clarity. Asterisk, she stood at the sink longer than she needed, glancing at the fence line. She told herself she wasn't looking for him, that it was just coincidence. But when she caught a glimpse of Liam stepping out of his garage, her breath caught. She ducked quickly, ashamed of herself. This wasn't who she was. Asterisk, days passed. Mark didn't call. Or maybe he did and she stopped noticing. His voice had become a background hum, predictable, detached, and easy to ignore. She started thinking about how many meals she'd eaten alone, how many birthdays she'd spent making excuses for him. She had defended his ambition, his goals, his stress. But somewhere along the way, she stopped defending herself. Asterisk Liam came by again. This time, it was a book his mom had borrowed. She opened the door cautiously, but his expression was calm, almost neutral. They talked briefly, nothing suggestive, nothing wrong. But when he handed her the book, his fingers grazed hers and neither of them pulled away. It wasn't intentional, or maybe it was. Asterisk, she didn't invite him in. But he didn't need to be inside the house, to be inside her thoughts. Later that night, she reread old texts from Mark. Messages that once made her smile now felt like receipts from a version of her life she no longer believed in. Asterisk, the next time she saw Liam, it was in the driveway. She was bringing in groceries, struggling with a bag. He offered to help. She should have said no. She didn't. Inside, he asked about a photo on the wall, a picture from her honeymoon. She gave a half-truth. That was a good day. He nodded, looking at the photo, then at her. You look different now. Asterisk, she asked what he meant. He didn't answer directly. You smile like you're remembering something that hurts. The way he said it made her stomach tighten. He was always doing that, cutting right to the places she kept guarded. And she hated that part of her, didn't want him to stop. Asterisk, that evening, it rained. She stood by the back door, watching the water slide down the glass. She thought about how long she'd gone without being touched with intention, not obligation, not out of routine, just because someone wanted to. She wondered if Mark even remembered the last time he touched her like that. Asterisk, the knock came late. She opened the door without thinking. Liam stood there, drenched, holding a bag. I brought your umbrella back, he said. She didn't even remember lending him one. They stood in silence, and then he stepped forward, slow, unsure, waiting. For her to stop him? She didn't. Asterisk, his lips touched hers like a question. Her answer came without words. For a moment, she was no one's wife, no one's placeholder. She was Alina again, breathing, burning, alive. Asterisk, when they parted, she stepped back. This can't happen, she whispered. Liam didn't argue. He nodded. But there was a sadness in his eyes she hadn't seen before. Asterisk, she locked the door behind him and leaned against it, heart racing. Not from guilt, not yet. From clarity. For the first time in years, she wasn't invisible. Asterisk, later. Mark called. She stared at the screen until it stopped ringing. He didn't leave a voicemail. She didn't call back. Asterisk, sleep wouldn't come. Her body remembered too much. Her mind refused to settle. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling again, but this time the silence wasn't empty, was filled with the weight of choices she never thought she'd make. Asterisk, she told herself it was a mistake, slip, something that would never happen again. But deep down, she knew. The line wasn't just crossed. It was erased. Asterisk. Alina didn't sleep. Morning arrived with a dull ache behind her eyes and a silence that now felt sharper, more dangerous. She avoided mirrors. She didn't want to see the woman who let herself be seen, then touched, then changed. Okay. Everything that once felt routine now felt exposed. The way her fingers gripped the mug. The way she moved through the kitchen, it all carried the residue of a moment that should. V never happened. Asterisk Liam didn't come by the next day or the one after that. But the absence was louder than his presence. She found herself wondering if he regretted it, if he felt used, or maybe he was giving her space. She wasn't sure which scared her more, that he'd walk away without a word, or that he wouldn't. Asterisk Mark came home 2 days early. No warning. Just a message. Landing at 8. Can't wait to be home. The words felt unfamiliar. He hadn't said anything like that in months. She stood frozen, reading the text 3 times. Something in her wanted to reply with warmth, but her fingers wouldn't move. Asterisk, he arrived with flowers and apologies. Said he'd been working on a surprise, trying to wrap up everything so they could spend real time together. He kissed her forehead and held her like he used to. She wanted to sink into it, but her body tensed. His hands felt foreign now. Asterisk's dinner was quiet but warm. Mark talked about wanting to take a break, book a trip, start over. He spoke as if the version of her he left behind was still waiting in this house. He didn't see what Liam had seen, and now that she'd felt seen, everything else felt shallow. Asterisk, she excused herself early and sat in the dark. Her chest felt heavy, not from guilt, but confusion. There was no plan, no future with Liam. It was never supposed to be more than a stolen moment. But it changed the way she felt in her own skin. Asterisk, the next afternoon, Liam showed up. Brief knock, no smile. Just a quiet, loaded presence. She stepped outside, closing the door behind her. He didn't speak at first, just looked at her. Then finally, was it just a game to you? Asterisk, she shook her head. No, it wasn't a game. But it wasn't real either. It couldn't be. Asterisk, he looked down, jaw clenched. It was real to me. I didn't come in here thinking anything, but I saw you, and you let me. Asterisk, I know, she said, her voice shaking. I shouldn't have. I wasn't fair to you. Asterisk, Liam stepped back, emotion restrained but visible. You didn't just cheat on him. You used me to feel something, then walked away. Asterisk, she wanted to defend herself. But he was right. It wasn't love. It was desperation dressed in warmth. She whispered, I'm sorry, Asterisk. He nodded once and walked off. No anger, no drama, just an ending. Asterisk back inside. Mark asked who it was. She said it was nothing, and that was the truth now. Liam was nothing, but not because he didn't matter. Because what he woke in her had nowhere to go. Asterisk days passed. Mark stayed longer than usual. Tried harder, cooked with her. Laughed more. He noticed things he hadn't in years. And she smiled when he did. But inside she knew the damage wasn't outside. Their marriage, it was inside her. Asterisk, she started deleting photos. Not of Liam. There were none. She deleted her own old pictures, versions of herself she no longer believed in. She stopped trying to look happy. She stopped trying to pretend that love alone had failed her. What? Failed her was the quiet, the fading, the permission she gave herself to disappear. Asterisk, she sat alone one evening while Mark was upstairs. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number. No message. She deleted it without opening. Some doors, once closed, stay closed. Asterisk, she didn't cry. She didn't regret, but she knew the cost. Some betrayals don't come with consequences. Some come with clarity. And clarity is the worst punishment of all, because it doesn't fade. Asterisk, she stood at the window again, watching the same yard, the same fence, the same world. Everything looked the same. But she wasn't, and she couldn't go back. Not to the woman she was. Not to the story they thought they were living. Asterisk, She whispered to no one. I was never waiting to be saved. I was waiting to be